It still sends shivers down my spine, even thinking about it. I just moved into my dorm room, a fresh-faced freshman, buzzing with the typical college excitement. As a girl starting college in a new city, I thought I was ready for anything. New people, new freedom, it was everything I'd dreamed of. My room was on the third floor of an older building, overlooking a quad that was still vibrant green in early September. It felt like the start of something truly great. My roommate was a girl named Jessica. She was already there when I arrived, her side of the room meticulously organized, a stark contrast to the chaos of my unpacked boxes. Jessica was quiet, almost unnervingly so. She offered a small, polite smile when I introduced myself, then retreated to her desk, burying her nose in a textbook. I tried to strike up a conversation a few times about classes, about our hometowns, but her responses were always brief, almost monosyllabic. She wasn't rude, just distant. I figured she was shy, maybe a little overwhelmed, and decided to give her space. We coexisted, two separate islands in a small rectangular room. The first week was a blur of orientation events, new classes, and awkward introductions. I was exhausted but exhilarated. That's when the little things started. At first, I dismissed them. My favorite mug, which I distinctly remembered leaving on my desk, would be in the kitchenette. My phone charger, always coiled neatly by my bed, would turn up plugged into the wall on Jessica's side of the room. Small stuff. Annoying but easily explained away. Maybe I was just forgetful, or maybe Jessica was using them and putting them back without asking. I tried to ask her once about the mug, but she just blinked at me, a blank expression on her face, and said, "Oh, was that yours?" Sorry, I must have grabbed it by mistake. Her apology felt rote, like she was just going through the motions. Then came the whispers, faint, almost imperceptible at first. I'd be studying late, Jessica usually asleep in her bed, and I'd hear them. A low murmur, like someone talking just beyond the range of clear hearing. It sounded like a conversation, but I could never make out words. My heart would pound, and I'd snap my head up, scanning the room. Nothing, just the hum of the mini fridge and the distant sounds of dorm life. I'd convince myself it was the pipes, or the wind, or maybe just my own tired brain playing tricks on me. Stress, I told myself. College was a big adjustment. The shadows were harder to explain, fleeting, dark blurs in my peripheral vision. A movement by the door when I knew Jessica was in bed. A flicker near the wardrobe when I was sure I was alone. Each time when I turned my head, there was nothing. Just the familiar, slightly cluttered room. I started checking, double-checking. Was Jessica really asleep? Yes, her breathing was even, her form still under the covers. Was the door closed? Yes, it was unsettling, but I was determined not to be that freshman who freaked out over every creak and groan in an old building. I tried to rationalize it, eye fatigue maybe. The fluorescent lights in the study lounge, anything but what my gut was starting to whisper. The real turning point came about 3 weeks in. It was a Tuesday night, and I was deep in a dream, something about flying over a vast, dark ocean. Suddenly the dream shattered. I was awake, bolt upright in bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The room was dark, save for the sliver of moonlight cutting through the gap in the curtains. And then I heard it. Jessica was talking in her sleep. But it wasn't just Jessica. Her voice was distorted, guttural, like gravel being dragged across a concrete floor. And it wasn't just one voice. It echoed, a chilling duet of two distinct tones, both undeniably hers, yet utterly alien. One was a low, resonant hum, the other a higher, reedy whisper that seemed to slither into my ears. They overlapped, intertwined, creating a cacophony of sound that made my skin crawl. It wasn't words, not really. More like a series of drawn-out vowels and guttural sighs. It was the whispers. The faint, indistinct whispers I'd been hearing when I was alone. They were coming from Jessica, from her mouth, but from two voices. I froze, barely daring to breathe. My eyes were wide open, straining in the darkness, trying to make out her form. She was lying on her side, facing away from me, her back to the wall. The sounds continued for what felt like an eternity, a horrifying, intimate performance in the dead of night. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The room was plunged back into silence, a silence that felt heavier, more menacing than before. I lay there, rigid, until the first hint of dawn crept through the window. I didn't sleep another wink. From that night on, I started watching Jessica. Not overtly, but subtly. I noticed things. Small things that, when added to the growing pile of weirdness, became terrifying. She never seemed to leave the room when I did. I'd grab my backpack, head out for class, and she'd be at her desk. I'd run to the common room for 5 minutes to print something, practically sprinting, and when I came back, she'd be there exactly where. I'd left her, sometimes in a slightly different position, but always there. It was like she materialized or never truly left. It was impossible. I never saw her with anyone, never heard her talking on the phone. She was always just in the room. The feeling of being watched intensified. I felt eyes on me even when Jessica was clearly facing her desk or when she was asleep. The shadows became bolder, more defined, though still vanishing when I looked directly. My belongings continued to shift, sometimes in ways that felt deliberately provocative. My toothbrush would be in her holder. My laptop would be open to a random, blank document. I was starting to lose it. I called my best friend from home, Chloe, late one night. I tried to make it sound casual, like a funny dorm story, but my voice trembled. "Dude, my roommate is seriously weird," I started, then launched into the whole saga, the moving objects, the whispers, the two voices. Chloe listened patiently. "Okay, so she's a sleepwalker," she suggested, trying to sound logical. "The voices could be some kind of sleep-talking thing, and maybe she's just a neat freak and moves your stuff." "No, Chloe," I whispered, my voice tight with fear. "You don't understand, it's not like that. It feels sinister, like she's doing it." And the way her voice sounded, it wasn't just sleep-talking. It was like something else was talking through her. There was a pause on the other end. "Look," Chloe said, her voice softening, "I know you're stressed with college, but if you're really worried, maybe you should talk to Enra or set up a camera." The camera idea lodged itself in my brain. It was extreme, I knew, a breach of privacy, but I was desperate. I needed proof. I needed to know I wasn't going crazy. I bought a tiny, discreet camera online, the kind that looks like a USB charger, and had it shipped to a friend's off-campus apartment. The day it arrived, my hands were shaking as I plugged it into the outlet near my bed, angled subtly to capture Jessica's side of the room without being too obvious. I set it to record motion-activated footage. This was it. This would give me answers, or prove I was just overtired and paranoid. I went to bed that night feeling a strange mix of dread and hope. The next morning I woke up, my heart pounding with anticipation. Jessica was already up, sitting at her desk, facing away from me. I waited until she left for her 8 a.m. class, or rather, until she appeared to leave, as I still hadn't seen her actually exit the room. The moment I heard the door click shut, I practically leaped out of bed and unplugged the camera. I rushed to my laptop, my fingers fumbling as I connected the camera to the USB port. The folder appeared. Recordings. I clicked it open. The files were there, but they were corrupted. My breath hitched. No, that couldn't be right. I'd set it up perfectly. I checked the settings on the camera itself. Everything was still configured for motion detection. I tried to access the internal memory directly. Nothing usable, just static. Every single recording was gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated noise. It was like the data had been corrupted, wiped clean, leaving only fragments. My mind raced. How could this happen? Had Jessica found it? But if she had, why not just unplug it? Why destroy the data? Unless she didn't want me to see something specific. My hands trembled as I clicked through the damaged files, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Then, buried deep within the corrupted files, almost as if it were a glitch, a single, barely visible burst of footage appeared. It was only a single frame, grainy and distorted, but it was enough. The camera's perspective was from my bedside. I was clearly visible, asleep in my bed, covers pulled up to my chin. And there, standing silently by her own bed, facing me, was Jessica. Her eyes were wide open, fixed on my sleeping form. Her face was devoid of expression, a blank mask in the dim light. She wasn't moving, not even breathing visibly, just standing there watching. The footage flickered, then dissolved back into static. That was it. I didn't need to see anything else. The whispers, the shifting objects, the shadows, the two voices, her uncanny presence, it all clicked into place. I didn't know what she was or what she wanted, but I knew I couldn't stay. I packed my bags that day, every single item. I didn't say goodbye to Jessica. I didn't even look at her. I just left a note for the Raw, something vague about unforeseen family circumstances and needing to move off campus immediately. I transferred to a different dorm the very next day, a single room this time on the opposite side of campus. I haven't looked back. I still don't know what was going on in that room or with Jessica, and honestly, I don't want to. Some mysteries are better left unsolved. I've always been the kind of girl who's cautious but not paranoid. I like to keep things organized, I plan ahead, and I double-check locks without thinking twice. So when I say this story stayed with me, I don't mean I'm easily shaken. It's just that I saw someone I trusted, and later found out he was never supposed to be there. My dorm wasn't glamorous or cute in the Instagram sense. It was functional. Beige walls, low ceilings, creaky elevators that smelled like wet notebooks. I was in room 405 with a roommate I'd met during orientation. We weren't best friends, but we had a decent rhythm. Headphones on, polite smiles, occasional walks to the dining hall together. It started with the man near the stairwell. I had come back from a late group study session, still clutching a half-eaten granola bar, when I saw him closing up a supply closet by the water tap. He was definitely older, not college-aged, maybe early 40s, with a lean frame and a kind of quiet presence. He wore black slacks and a navy jacket, nothing fancy, just deliberate. There was a key ring on his belt and some sort of lanyard clipped near his hip. I didn't look too closely. I just gave him a polite smile and walked past. He gave me a small nod. Honestly, I liked that he wasn't weird about it. I'm used to random male attention, especially late at night, but this guy didn't even glance twice. That made me feel a little safer. I saw him again 2 days later, standing outside the side exit near the bike racks, just standing, no cigarette, no phone, hands behind his back like he was waiting for something. I walked a little faster, but when I turned to glance back, he was gone. Over the next few weeks, I saw him maybe 5 or 6 more times, sometimes in the hall, once on the floor above, once through the glass of the laundry room. Never close, never threatening, always just present. Then came the lockout. I'd stepped into the hallway in my socks to throw out some ramen cups and let the heavy door slam shut behind me. My phone and keys were inside, of course. My roommate was gone for the weekend, typical. I felt a lump of embarrassment rise in my throat, so I just stood there, barefoot on cold tile, trying to laugh it off. That's when I saw him again. He came around the corner like he always did, quiet and calm. He paused when he saw me. "Locked out?" he asked, not unkindly. I nodded, arms crossed, trying to keep from looking like a complete idiot. He gestured to the stairwell. "Come to the desk, I can help." I hesitated for a second. We weren't supposed to have 24-hour desk coverage. But he had keys, and he wasn't a stranger by this point. He didn't ask for my name, he didn't take my ID, just walked me up to my room, used his keys, and opened the door like it was nothing. "Be more careful," he said gently. I smiled and thanked him. It wasn't until breakfast the next morning that I casually mentioned it to our Ra. She blinked at me. "Who let you in?" I described him the best I could. She stared for a few seconds. "I don't think anyone on our staff looks like that. You sure he had a badge?" I nodded. It was clipped to his belt, like a real one. She said she'd check with housing. That's when I noticed things getting weird. I asked around. No one had ever seen him. Not in the stairwells, not by the trash room, not in the halls. I even asked the girl from 407, who's basically a hallway vampire and stays up all night playing League. Nothing. I stopped sleeping well. It wasn't fear exactly, just this gnawing discomfort. One night I saw the study room light on, which was odd because it locks after 10 p.m. I pushed the door open and there he was sitting alone, staring at the whiteboard. He didn't flinch when I walked in, just stood and said, "Some rooms stay open longer than they should." Then he turned to me and said, "You shouldn't walk alone so late. Not everyone here means well." It wasn't a threat, it felt more like a warning. He brushed past me and disappeared down the stairwell again. That was the last time I saw him. I got brave and went to campus security the next day, described him, his clothes, his key ring, the badge. They looked at me like I was describing someone from another school. They pulled up access logs, no one matched. They showed me pictures of all active staff. I pointed at a few faces, but none were him. I asked about the cameras. They were polite but firm. Only the front and back entrances have recording. No footage shows anyone like that entering or exiting. I went back to the Ra again. She was weirdly quiet. Then she said, "I think I've seen someone like that before, years ago when I was a freshman, different dorm." I tilted my head. It was the same guy. She nodded slowly. "They demolished it my sophomore year. But I remember a man like that. Used to walk around the halls late, not on staff, just there. Someone said he used to work for housing way back. But no one knew his name." "What dorm was it?" I asked. She told me. I looked it up. It was torn down 6 years ago. Campus security had no record of him. But my Ross swore they'd seen him before, years ago, in a different dorm that no longer exists. When I started college, I was just grateful to be out of my parents' house. The dorm wasn't fancy, but it was mine. A small, single room with a desk, bed, and a closet. I moved in a week before the semester started, so it was quiet, and I liked that. At first, everything felt normal. I'd unpacked, organized my stuff, and was settling into a routine. But about 3 weeks in, I started to notice little things. My toothpaste cap would be off when I was sure I closed it. Food in the fridge would be missing a few bites or just gone. Nothing major, just enough to make me question myself. I thought maybe I was sleepwalking or just forgetful, but I didn't feel tired or off. I even stopped drinking coffee after 7 p.m. just in case it was affecting my sleep. One afternoon, I came back from class and my desk drawer was open. I never leave it open. It's the one where I kept all my random stuff, USB drives, old receipts, some cash. The money was still there, but things were shifted. I asked my dorm Ra if maybe maintenance had come by. He said no work orders were filed. I thought about installing a camera, but the dorm handbook technically banned any recording devices. I didn't want to risk getting in trouble. So I started taking photos of my room before leaving, just quick shots with my phone to track what things looked like. I also started placing things in specific patterns, not traps, just visual markers. A notebook angled just so, a coin on the corner of my desk, a chair pushed to an odd angle. It happened again the next week. My photos showed the chair moved slightly and a snack I left out was missing. The notebook was flipped. I knew I didn't do that. I didn't tell anyone. The next 3 days, nothing happened. Everything stayed exactly how I left it. But on the 4th day, I came back from class and there it was. The coin had moved. The chair was slightly off. A granola bar gone. I stood there for 5 full minutes trying to process what that meant. No one should have been able to get in. I stopped sleeping properly after that. I'd wake up at any little sound. The walls were thin and the vents carried noise, so I always heard people in the hallway, showers, the usual. But I started hearing something new, soft scraping or bumping overhead. I assumed it was just the building settling. Then one night I stayed up late studying. Around 2 a.m. I heard it again, a low thud above me, not in the hallway, not the room next door, directly above me. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like forever. There was a square outline of a crawlspace hatch above the closet. I'd seen it before, assumed it was for wiring or maintenance. But that night it looked different. I couldn't explain it, but I was suddenly sure someone was up there. I went to the Ra, told him someone might be in the ceiling. He laughed it off at first until I pushed him to take a look. He got a step ladder and opened the hatch. Dust fell out, then nothing, just darkness. He shined his flashlight up and said it was empty. I asked if I could go up. He looked at me like I was crazy, but he let me. I pulled myself into the crawl space, and that's when I saw it. Blankets, a used water bottle, food wrappers. Someone had been living up there. The Ra called campus security. They did a sweep, but whoever had been up there was gone. They found a backpack with clothes, some notebooks, and this part I'll never forget, a full key ring, including one marked for my room. They never caught the person, no idea how long they'd been there or when they left, but the security guy told me something that stuck with me. The college had been reusing dorm locks for years. Unless the old key was turned in or reported, there was no record. Someone must have lived in that room before me, copied the key, and moved out, but they didn't really move out. They waited until the next student moved in, and then they came back. To this day, I still check above closets, even in apartments, especially when something feels off. Because you never really know who had the key before you.